All right, give me a second. Get in the podcast mode here. All right. Ready, Alec?
Yep.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the IP Cafe. I'm one of your hosts, Desmond Grimes. My other host there is Alex Shapiro, and today we have a big guest. We talked about it last week. We talked about them joining. So current CEO of the Maryland Tech Council, former Secretary of Commerce for the state of Maryland, and Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, former Secretary of Labor for the state of Maryland.
Doing good so far. Yeah.
Managing partner of a cybersecurity business at one point.
Correct.
And that's as far as I went back. And also graduate of the greatest liberal arts university college in the state of Maryland.
Hood College.
Hood College.
I knew you were going to hang on that.
2 alums. Alec, your college sucks. Period. Anyways, everyone, welcome Kelly Schulz to the IP Cafe. Kelly, thanks for hopping on with us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys both for entertaining me today. I can't wait to talk about some really cool stuff that's happening in Maryland. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to dive right in. Kelly, just give us an insight about your background. How did you get to being the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council? How did you get into politics? What were the steps that got you to the point to where you are right now?
All right, this is going to sound like made up, but it's actually the truth. And it's Hood College that got me here. I mean,
awesome.
I know, Desmond. So just roll with me just for a second, okay? So I moved to Frederick, Maryland from Rochester, New York with my family in 2003, right? So 21 years ago. And my kids were getting older. I had not finished my college degree before I moved down here. I was selling real estate in New York and doing a couple of other things, but mostly, caring for my kids. And, I got down here and I'm like, oh, well, I need to continue with my career pathway. And I wanted to be an attorney. And so I said, well, I have to get my bachelor's degree. And as luck has it, Hood College was there in Frederick, in the town that I moved into. And I became a political science major at Hood College. I had 2 years to complete my bachelor's degree. And I was going to be political science because that was a great major to have if you apply for law school. So I went through 2 years and it was great. I had some great advisors. I learned a lot. I was the non-traditional student, which means I was older than everybody else. Like a lot of these kids in my classes were almost my kids' ages at this point in time. They called me soccer mom because I was a lacrosse and hockey mom, but they called me soccer mom because I was always heading to a hockey or lacrosse game. And it was really great. And I had to do an internship for my major. And so that year in 2005, when I was there was a mayoral race happening in the city of Frederick. It was like the only election that was happening in the entire state outside of Annapolis City. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to reach out to someone and volunteer my time so I could have internship credits, right? So I could graduate. And it was a small little race in the city of Frederick, and I was immediately put to work on a volunteer capacity of basically doing everything for the campaign, which I had no idea how to do any of it because I'd never been really political or worked on a campaign before. And then I became the volunteer coordinator. I became the marketing manager. I just did all of this stuff. My candidate lost the primary, but I still had all of this time I had to put in for my internship. So I said, well, how about this, people in our little Republican sphere? How about I just volunteer my time for the remaining candidates that did win their primary? So I did that, and I met some amazing people. I met what is now my lifelong mentor, David Brinkley, who was a senator at that point in time, a state senator, and a bunch of other people. And the Republicans ended up winning, large seats in the city of Frederick, and that was a lot of fun. And all of my contacts that I made, whether it be in the congressional seats or in the state legislative seats, I just made some really great friends and contacts. And I like to say that was the beginning of the end, because everything just kind of steamrolled after that into running for elected office in 2010 and, serving as an elected official in the state. And I would say most relevant to where I am as the CEO of MTC right now is that my experience in workforce development through the Department of Labor and economic development through the Department of Commerce, it was kind of a great mingling of what the CEO position at MTC looks like, being able to promote everything about an ecosystem that's so important to the state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll touch on it. The Hood College has this unique way, and I'll drop Hood College here in a second, Alec, because I'm tired of it.
I'm okay. You do you.
Hood College has a unique way of putting you into positions by pure accident, I think, in a good way. I think, and I imagine the curriculum hasn't changed that much, but I know when I was there, of course I graduated in 2020, so great time to be a graduate. They kind of forced us to take an internship. Like you have to go and do an internship. And I didn't get into politics, but similar circumstance was like I needed an internship somewhere, and I ended up in like talent acquisition randomly for a tech company down in Reston, Virginia. And it was an accident almost, and then I stumbled my way into it, and it's kind of like led me down the path of like where I am now. And I mean, not that I'm in the greatest place, I guess.
Okay,
so North Carolina.
And North Carolina is great and complete competition with what we're doing here in Maryland, but that's okay. So, you're still connected. But I would say academia, higher academia in general, those institutions that are most successful for the students that are, really kind of spending a large chunk of your time, right, and your adult life with, the best outcomes are those that are so interconnected with the business community that they're able to provide those opportunities. So Hood's not alone in that. I just so happen to sit on a business advisory board for Hood, right, and be able to work with the president and making sure that our companies have this interaction because of how important that is. And that really goes towards the entire world of workforce development, right? So workforce development is about who you know. It's about being connected. It's about making sure that you have the exact skills that are there. And a lot of that right now is what we focus on at the Maryland Tech Council. And so I think they all go hand in hand, and higher ed has to be the major linking port to that for individuals that are in that part of their life.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I wrote a paper on it when I was in college about how just education is the starting point for, economic growth in the world, in my opinion. And I would love to talk about Hood more. I do know that they started a biomedical research program to kind of help with the thriving life science community in Maryland. I know Hood wants to make an exact or a definite impact on that, and I think they can. I mean, the facility's growing there for the bio space or whatever they're in, the bio building. Which is really, really great, and I think it's going to impact the community. But I want to talk about Maryland Tech Council. How are things going at the Maryland Tech Council?
Great.
In your opinion?
Great. We are in a growth pattern, right? And I think it's an exciting time to be a part of an industry. So I will just say, as a disclaimer, I am not techie.
Neither am I.
So don't ask me any really super technical questions. My kids like to say, Mom, you're a political scientist. You're not a real scientist. And my kids, of course, are apparently the real scientists, right? I mean, they don't have a Bachelor of Arts degree, right? But I think it's kind of fun to think about what the entire ecosystem looks today here locally and also globally. It's such an exciting time. You can't have advancement in economic reality and in people's lives without talking about innovation. And that innovation route is so important to our entire community and the ecosystem that it's just really fun to see the growth and the expansion and to be a part of the voice of that ecosystem to make sure that people understand the relevancy of what we do.
And that,
Absolutely.
as we said the other week with Chris, again, that's kind of like the whole catalyst behind this is that community and the growth with that. So
It is. And you think about everything. And so the Tech Council is kind of a fun a study, I guess, in what the ecosystem looks like, because our membership at the Tech Council, and by the way, we are great. We're over 800 members. We're at a peak of where we've ever been in the 40 years of our existence, right? And we have a lot to say about how to move forward. But within the Maryland Tech Council, we, of course, have the bio-life science leaders in the state. We have the tech leaders in the state, two separate areas of industry sectors. But we also have academia members. We also have those service providers, the bankers, the lawyers, the IP professionals, right? The everything that's going to provide a service to those types of industries. And then we have government that's involved too, right? So local economic development offices within the counties, they're very active, and workforce development agencies are very active. And that is a small snapshot of really what the ecosystem for technology looks like globally. And without all of that input from all different levels of the community, you're not going to have growth and prosperity.
Absolutely. And that's something I think Maryland does a really good job at. It's specifically the Maryland Tech Council does a really good job at. I moved down here to North Carolina, and there's a lot of great initiatives in the state, and they're doing fine things. But one thing I do miss is there is a sense of connection in Maryland with tech in like bio, because that's, Info Pathways, that's kind of like our sector, like the biotechnology sector. And I kind of miss it here because it's like very much they have the North Carolina Tech Council or Tech Association, and then there's NC Bio, and they're very separated. And I think Maryland does a great job at bridging that gap. And I think it's so unique, in my opinion, on just the things that you guys do.
It's unique it's unique from across the country. So Maryland is one of the very few states that has an integration of the two different sectors. And I don't know the complete history. I mean, I know the timeline of what happened, but I like to say it's a series of marriages and divorces over 40 years that we are who we are today, because there were times that those industry sectors were separated. But right now, the importance of having them combined into one area, that collision between those industries is so dynamic. And I think you see it most importantly right now between biotech and AI, right? So what does the data science and that tech part look like to the advancement of, life-saving treatments and therapies and diagnostics that's happening in the world of life science?
Absolutely. I myself and another one of our senior technicians worked on a project for a company in San Francisco. I know it's on the other coast, but on building some sort of new AI imaging system for this life science company. And we were getting into the weeds of it, and our technician was great, and he understood, and he was kind of flying through things, and they're trying to explain it to me, and I'm like, I mean, sounds great. Chat GPT and all of that sounds good to me. And I sound like an idiot. And, it makes this even sound worse because we did have an AI expert on the podcast like a couple weeks ago. I think I should be more educated. But, I mean, let's be honest. I'm with you, Kelly. I'm not techie at all. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm in the position I'm in. But, yeah, it's fine. Anyways, so, all of the great things that are happening in Maryland and all of that stuff. But, like, what are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities, I guess, that you guys are currently facing in the tech and life science industry in Maryland right now?
Yeah, I would say, there's always a battle for number one, number two, number three, right? So coming from the 7 years that I spent within the Hogan administration and before that, I always felt that there was a mission that I had in order to be able to make sure that Maryland was the best state in the nation in order to be able to attract new businesses and keep businesses, right? Because that is those healthy economic growth patterns are good for us, right? They're good for our families. They're good for our communities. So I still feel that mission at the Tech Council, right? I still feel like we have to make sure that everybody out there knows that Maryland is the number one place to come and do business. And it's hard sometimes to deliver that message when people across the country don't typically think of Maryland as the first place where they would want to go and expand and open a life science company or a tech company. Even though we are the number 3 largest biotech community in the country, behind, of course, California and Boston, people still look at those as the premiers and kind of Maryland as somewhat less than. So getting our message out to the rest of the world about what we have and what we can create, which is why I'm so excited that you guys are doing this podcast, because this helps us with our messaging. I think that is, it's so hard. And I like to say to all of my friends that I've been surrounded with in this ecosystem, we talk about economic development. We do a great job in Maryland of patting ourselves on the back for all of the great things that we do. And we have lots of meetings. And we get together a lot, and we tell each other how great we are a lot, right? We need to tell everybody else that's outside of Maryland, right, how great we are, and really talk about those resources, the assets that we have, the people power, the manpower, the talent. And so that's one of the challenges that I see that the Maryland Tech Council can participate in to be able to get that story out to the rest of the world, to let them know just the great types of opportunities that exist here in the state. I would say that's one. The next is, it's a talent question, right? We have to continually look at the talent that we have available for those industry sectors in this state to make it an easy transition for people to want to grow or expand here. And that's not something that happens overnight. It has to be a continual conversation and a continual push in order to be able to provide access to skills education for the talent of the future. And we have to continuously talk about being able to create that.
So
Absolutely. And go ahead, Alec.
I was going to say, so with all that, what are some recent initiatives that you guys are working on to kind of help that and bolster that?
Yeah. So this week, Thursday, we have our grand opening ribbon cutting for our biomanufacturing training center at Montgomery County. And that is an entry-level training school, basically, for a laboratory environment, the exact manufacturing line of how students would go into, say, a Kite Pharmaceutical, Gilead, AstraZeneca, GSK, providing them with skills in a very short period of time to get them that entry-level access to a career that maybe they had never thought about before, right? So this is, somebody can walk into our facility, have a high school diploma, and do maybe a 2 or 3 week boot camp and have the necessary skills to apply for a very entry-level position at one of these large organizations, making much more than living wage, right? And having those opportunities to continue to upskill in different types of skills and training with a curriculum that's very amenable to advancement in their career. And that's an opportunity that hasn't happened before. So we have taken that on as a nonprofit organization in Maryland and have received some funding from both the federal, state, and local governments in order to be able to make that happen. And I think that's one step into satisfying a need for this particular industry sector. Biomanufacturing is something that's not necessarily unique to Maryland, but in certain parts of the state, we lead those efforts among other states in the country. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think that's really good because, when we, the conference the other week, there's a lot of times there's college students and stuff kind of perusing around, and they're interested in getting involved, but they're very unsure of how to kind of take that step. So having that, I think, is a great.
Well, so here's the thing, in promoting this type of workforce training, there's a lot of discussion amongst higher academia as to why we're not putting this into, credit-based type programs, either at the community college or at the secondary colleges. And I think the very interesting fact is coming from, a workforce development background. You don't necessarily need the 4-year degrees or above in order to be able to enter into a type of industry. We should look at, in this country, education as a lifelong opportunity and not something that has to be condensed into a very specific time frame. And getting people involved in understanding what a lab environment looks like, what the ecosystem looks like, I think that's very healthy for individuals to then expand on their educational levels if they so choose, if it's a career opportunity that they want to pursue. And I think so often in the past, we have gotten very stuck on what that 4-year degree looks like, right? And what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You have to decide right now when you're 18 years old, hurry, make a statement and go do it, right? Having no interaction with that industry at all. So I think this is a great option to get people. We finished our first 2-week cohort of boot camp a couple of weeks ago, and the average age trainee in that program was 30 years old. So these are people that are making changes in their life, in their career patterns. They're coming back from the military, going into a civilian type of program. And I think there's just a lot of opportunities for those types of programs that are out there.
Absolutely. And I've actually done a tour. I did a tour, probably not the same now, but I did a tour a long time ago, 2 or 3 years ago, of the Montgomery College BioTrack program. It's runs in line with what you guys are doing now as far as the training goes.
It's Mark's program.
And I thought it was so unique in how Maryland and the Tech Council, I guess, are focusing on talent. Because I was a recruiter in a past life, and I remember, like, man, I can't find anybody anywhere. And like kind of the thing at the time with the organization I was with was, well, they got to have a 4-year degree with a biology background, and there was no or to that sentence. It was like
Right.
4-year degree, biology background, that's who we need. And I feel as though we missed on a lot of talent that was actually in the community where we could go and be like, okay, well, they might not have 4 years of they might not have a 4-year degree, or they might not have a background in biology, but they went through a training program that aligns with everything that we do as an organization, and they have experience in other fields that could be relevant to what they're doing now or what they might want to move into. And I found it incredibly, I guess, just kind of uplifting, and it made my life easier as a recruiter and a talent acquisition specialist to go and find talent. And eventually I was able to break through, and we were able to make some connections and bring on some of those individuals into the organization, and they made an immediate impact. And some of them, I think, have been promoted since, and they have continued to show, growth, in the field. And I think that's just amazing. And I that's something I do miss, being down here is just, I don't recruit anymore, thankfully. That was not my, it sounds terrible. It was not,
But you
not
learned a
fun for
lot.
me.
Look at that. You learned a
I did.
profession that you didn't want to be in, and that's half the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at other states. So I grew up in West Virginia, not in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. I grew up in Charlestown, so kind of DC metro area.
Kind of.
I don't care.
Kind of.
I don't care. It's DC metro area to me. I was an hour away from DC, an hour and a half from Baltimore. Anyways, and you talked about this small length of time where we have to decide what we're going to be when we grow up or whatever, or what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. And I don't want to bash the state of West Virginia at all, but something that I missed was those sorts of programs, or being introduced to programs like what you guys are doing with Montgomery College. And I kind of wish that we had that opportunity to grow in West Virginia, but hence why I moved to Maryland, the ability to learn and pick, or the ability to, I guess, choose what I wanted to do and have options and training programs and being able to learn, and mind you, I went to college too, but being able to learn was great. And I remember being that 18-year-old kid, and I was like, well, I like baseball and sports. I want to be a physical therapist. Not smart enough for that one. So I like psychology. Let me be a psych major. Didn't want to read that much. So ended up being a sociology major and still read as much as I did. But anyways, I just had such a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do. And then when I got out of college, it was like, well, I guess I'll go recruit because I don't have anything else going on. And I think the ecosystem in Maryland has helped me, and I think countless others, figure out what they wanted to do in life and give them options that is just not right after college or right after high school. It's just like it gives them the ability to kind of pick and choose and go through the life cycle of what it takes to find a position or a career in Maryland. And I think you guys are doing a great job. So I commend everything that you guys do. I think it's awesome.
Well, I mean, Desmond, to your point, when I was 18 years old and I had first decided I was going to give college a try, that didn't work out so well, right? I got married, I had babies, I did all of that. And I never would have said, what can I do to prepare myself to be the Secretary of Labor? Yeah. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as the Secretary of Labor when I was 18 years old, right? So Absolutely. It's about collecting all of the opportunities that you have throughout your life that leads you to what your ultimate, I guess, occupation, profession is. And it's just building on that. And I think that's what's so exciting about skills training, because it provides you an opportunity to collect different skills and different ways in which you want to participate, maybe in different sectors that might be more similar than you ever thought that they were. And so that's always my advice for young people, my kids included, whether they listen to me or not. Keep collecting skills, right? Keep just collecting ways in which you can be helpful for the rest of the world. And you're always going to find a spot that might be different than where you thought that you were going to be, but it's still going to be fun where you decide you're going to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell my friends, like, I work in tech and in life sciences, and they're like, you do? Like, oh, yes, but and I think it's a great thing to kind of key in on, is the ability to learn is always there, period. I always think there's opportunities to learn from people that are older or younger, same age as you, or there's always the ability to get better, without sounding just like a stereotypical athlete, but there's always the ability to get better and improve on what you're doing every day, career, family, emotionally, mentally, wherever you're at. I think there's always the opportunity to, find the next step. And good transition there by me here. What does the future of the Maryland Tech Council look like? What is the next step for you guys? Where are you guys headed? What's new initiatives, anything like that going on?
Yeah, well, so we're going to get through this week with the whole ribbon cutting for our new training center. And I think that's going to be a well-defining way for us to say this is how we have a foothold in what's happening in Maryland and in the tech scene. I think that's going to be great, and probably expand on that somehow in the future once we get our feet firmly planted on the ground. I'm excited about that. But when we talk about innovation and we talk about technology, I like to say that the Maryland Technology Council is tech agnostic. Right? Because we talked about the little bit of the uniqueness in which we have the combination of, we are the Bio International state affiliate, right? So we have that. We are also the state affiliate for an organization called TECNA, which is the North America Organization of Tech Councils, right? So we have that. But is technology either life sciences or digital? No. There's lots of stuff that's involved there, right? There's energy tech, there's sustainability, there's ag tech. And I know, Alec, that's a big thing that you and I have talked about recently.
Face lit up with that.
Yeah. But I mean, all of these technologies, all this innovation that's happening, it's exciting. And it really complements all of the things that we have traditionally thought about at the Tech Council. It's just taking it to a different level, and it's bringing in a different mentality Even at our conferences, we're mixing in energy and data centers, right? I mean, so there's a lot of conversation about how data energy usage is really, I would say, either hindering or helping whatever's happening in our community. And for us to be the place to have those dialogues, the conversation, and the differences of opinions, I think has helped to boost us to a level where people want to be able to understand what our members are talking about. What are the conversations we're having? How can we help to advocate for future innovation, not just in one sector, but in many sectors, because they really all do tie together for our ultimate mission.
Yeah, and I guess following up with that, my question for that would be, what do you see as far as like membership growth wise, the biggest sector of technology that would be growing going forward for the Maryland Tech Council?
I would say it's a combination of, well, we've had a huge influx in data center. Maryland has just kind of entered a data center conversation, opening up opportunities. So that has been a big effort that we've had. We had our first ever Maryland Data Center Summit this past August. And we sold out at 300 people, and I probably could have sold double that amount, but we were constricted by the size. And next year we will be double, right? That is a national conversation that's happening because of what's happening in the world of digital sciences, right? And we talked about AI and what that means as far as energy usage and data storage, and how do we balance that within our environments, especially in Maryland, where the production of energy is not growing, right? We're not generating enough energy for this. Maryland only produces about 60% of the energy that we use. So we import a lot of energy, which is making it not cost effective. So all of those conversations need to be had. We have had a huge amount of growth within the data center industry, not just from data center developers, but for everybody that's involved in those industries, including the energy sector and the ag sector, and how that relates to bio and agriculture and what that can mean to the future generation of energy, right? So I think that, I mean, listen, energy, if we don't get the energy question right in this country, then we are dooming the generations of the future, right? That is something that we have to get right. And the Tech Council is not necessarily making policy decisions. We're not even advocating for certain policy pathways. And sometimes it can be a little bit, of a struggle with people with very differing opinions. But we need to be able to have those conversations, and we need to have them in a safe place where those people that are making decisions have an opportunity to be educated on the issue, because it's a very complicated issue and we want to be able to get it right.
Yeah, I think we're at such a critical point with the energy, and the fact that we have all this technology and data to kind of show what is efficient, what isn't, and how to make it more efficient. It's a very key point for us to utilize technology for that. But it's, like you said, it's very, people are all over the place on it. So,
and there's some cool things that are happening in Maryland, right? So we have a Maryland Clean Energy Center, which has received fundings to be able to provide grants and resources to those startup innovators, right? Those entrepreneurs that are looking at different ways for battery storage. And there's really cool innovations that are coming out of the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins, and actually out in Western Maryland and on the Eastern Shore, right? So Maryland is a very diverse state when it comes to our geography, and being able to utilize, and so this is one of our goals for the next year or 2 years, is to be able to incorporate those innovative technologies that are happening in some of the more rural parts of our state that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be tech hubs. But have a lot of innovation that's coming out of there, especially in the world of clean energy tech and sustainability, and that is the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland. So we're going to be doing a lot with some federal grant money that we have to increase those tech environments out in different areas of the state. So we're going to be very widespread. It's going to be fun.
the energy topic is something that I find very interesting and fascinating. We bring up data centers, and we'll take a look at I think it was Amazon and Microsoft. Actually, recently Microsoft purchased 3 Mile Island, or they're doing some sort of collaboration where they're trying to produce more energy for said data centers that we've talked about.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to do some more stuff in Maryland, but is there anything going on now as far as like one of the bigger, larger tech companies coming into Maryland, establishing a data center? Because I know there's data centers in Northern Virginia and Alexandria and stuff like that. You drive by them, they're massive. But is Maryland doing anything right now as far as like data center build outs or anything like that? And with that, is there anything coming along on the clean energy side, nuclear energy, anything like that? Is Maryland kind of in that process of developing that?
Desmond, we are knee deep into that. We are head over our heels into headlines on that topic. So, yes, so the first major data center complex in Maryland is now located in Frederick, Maryland. And land was purchased about 3 years ago, and it's an old smelting plant, right? On couple thousand acres that was purchased, and the development is called Quantum Loophole. And
Quantum Loop, I was going to say, I heard about
Quantum Loop. And so it's a very big project, and what they've done is they have invested in the infrastructure to pull all of the fiber from Northern Virginia. And so for your listeners' benefit, Northern Virginia in that Ashburn, Reston area is the largest concentration of data centers in the world.
It's like the internet.
Like not even close. Like no one else even comes close to how many data centers they have there and how much fiber runs through that Northern Virginia area. So what this development organization did is they pulled fiber underneath the Potomac River and into Frederick County. So it's a matter of just a couple of miles, right? But they went under the river and they brought it to this site. And so now it'll be the first ever data center complex. Right. So they're not building data centers. They're putting infrastructure together on this 2,000 acre parcel so that data centers can buy kind of like a condominium lot. Right. I mean, so they're going to be maybe like 13 to 15 different data center sites for all of the operators, some of which you mentioned, others we'll never know about, who's there, but they'll provide that landing space.
So it's essentially going to be a business park for data centers.
It's a business park for data centers and in a condensed area, because the thought process behind it is to not be Loudoun County, Virginia, and not have data centers next to every Walgreens, right? Or every housing complex, and just kind of having them everywhere. But you can centrally locate them in areas where it's not going to be a big burden on the rest of the community. And so that's the thought process on it. So the local jurisdictions are struggling with the newness of data centers. The state is struggling with the newness of a new industry and the challenges that it brings about. So there are policies that have been put in place and probably additional policies that will come forward in order to be able to satisfy this new type of industry that's in Maryland. The governor has been supportive of the industry, but there's been a lot of questions, obviously, about the amount of energy that's consumed, about environmental issues, and the Maryland Tech Council has become the clearinghouse for those conversations and able to talk to policymakers about the pros and cons and thereof.
So how's that conversation going?
Some days better than others. Some days better than others. I didn't realize, so the history of it. So back in 2019, when I was Secretary of the Department of Commerce, I took a economic development trip out to California. And I'm like, I'm going out there to bring some business back to Maryland. That's my job, right? I am the chief economic developer of the state. I'm going to go and I'm going to find them. Went to Google, went to Facebook, went to, different places and had all these great meetings with these wonderful people. And to each meeting that I had with them, they said, well, Kelly, it's really great. We would love to come to Maryland, but what are you doing about the tax issue in Maryland on that? And the personal property tax is so high because for anybody that cares to know about data centers, you have to replace your internal computing part. Your server's everything every year or 2 years. And the personal property tax on that is astronomical. And so there's places across the country that don't have that. And they're like, just do this. And I said, okay, we're going to do that. The first year, 2019, we put a bill into, with the legislators, to take away the state personal property tax. And that bill failed the first year. 2020, the bill passed. To their word, those organizations that I had talked to immediately started calling up and say, okay, let's talk about what we can do in Maryland, right? So that was the beginning step of being able to attract business to the state. And then all of the other pieces just kind of fall in line as to, trying to work on zoning requirements. I'm telling you, those are... I'd never want to have to sit down and talk about zoning requirements and site planning. But you have to be able to be attractive to somebody first, right? So... and that's where we've been.
So what is this, kind of piggybacking off of this, but also I think I kind of know the answer, but not entirely sure. But what is kind of the draw for that industry and the tech industry going into Texas?
Well, I mean, Texas has a completely different tax structure. So let's just say that, right off the bat, right? It's a different economic climate in Texas. And they have more land than Maryland does, right? They may be a little bit more open. But one thing that I know for sure, just in talking to industry leaders, is that it's not going to be Maryland or Texas. It's not going to be Maryland or Ohio or Missouri, where, some big, advancements are happening. Every state, because of the innovation and the advancement in types of data and data science and digital technologies, it's going to have to be every state, right? So the vast increase of the amount of data centers that we have and the redundancy that we're going to have is going to be a nationwide search for spaces for data centers and what they look like. And I think the conversation that it's happening right now is not if it's going to go to a state, but how those states are going to adopt their policies, their regulatory processes, their reviews of environmental concerns, their review of energy concerns, and how are they going to do that differently from one another. There's not never going to be a need for more data centers. Like there's always going to be
now
that need for data centers, no matter where you are, right? The need is just escalating. So you guys, Desmond, because you're not a technology wizard, just like me, I'm going to tell you that if you do a Chat GPT search, and excuse me if you already know this, it takes 100 times more energy for a Chat GPT search than it does for a simple Google search. Energy.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Right. So not just and people don't realize the amount of energy that is consumed because of a simple search that we're doing on our phone or the Fitbit that's transmitting my steps to my email account. That takes energy, and people don't understand that because it's the data that is stored not in our clouds that create precipitation, but in the server rooms of these organizations that are collecting that data.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because Tom and Teresa talk about this all the time, how like when they used to have the WISP, that the amount of data and stuff that's being consumed by people on a daily basis and how much that actually requires to produce and store and serve up at any
Nobody
given
understands
time.
that, right? And everybody talks about being carbon neutral. That would be great.
Great
That would be
idea.
great, right? And that should be a goal for everybody, right? So if you're going to be carbon neutral, it doesn't mean that you're not going to consume energy, because we're all consuming energy all day long, right? It's the type of energy that you're consuming and maybe what you're putting back into an environmental aspect that's going to offset your usage of that energy, right? And so the idea that we're just going to stop using energy is not where we are in our cycle of humans.
Well, when we think about it from that aspect, like for people to watch this, for instance, like right now, this is stored on my computer, and it's
or
just
listen.
Huh?
Or listen.
Or listen, right. Right now, this is just stored on my computer. But
Right.
the minute we upload it to a platform, that platform exists in a data center somewhere. And that is requiring all that energy and stuff to store that, produce it, serve it up. And
Right.
I mean, there's just so much. I mean, we're not even talking like AI stuff or just that, but like the content alone that requires storage and energy to preserve. And I mean, we even
Right. You do online banking. How many of us do
Exactly.
online banking, right? I mean, how many of us I just went to the gas station and you put your, debit card and you pay for your gas. That's all data. I mean, everything we do every day. So, Desmond, you asked a little bit about nuclear energy. And again, I'm not an expert in nuclear energy, but
we have some customers that are.
We do.
and we love that, right? Because I think that has to be revisited. There's such a fear in this country for obvious reasons of what did happen at 3 Mile Island, of the casualties that come with some sort of an accident when it comes to nuclear energy. But we're also 40 years wiser than we were, right? And innovations are better, and regulatory processes are different. And I think that in my opinion, I think that has to be considered as a way to provide a clean energy standard. And they're even talking about portable energy, smaller nuclear energy types of co-location for that. I think that's what Microsoft is talking about. And Amazon here in Maryland has talked about that. And that's been in the news with connecting a data center down in southern Maryland with Calvert Cliffs, which is a nuclear energy producer here in the state. And so there's conversation that's happening around that, and some people hate it, and some people think that it's the answer. And I think that there's just going to have to be continued conversation to come up with whatever solution we come up with.
Yeah, and it's the interesting thing about nuclear that I find is we have been powering ships and submarines and stuff with people living right next to those systems for 50, 60 years at this point.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing I didn't know is that the one, I forget which lighthouse it is, but it's when you're on the Bay Bridge, not the one there in front of Sandy Point, but the next one towards Baltimore used to be powered by nuclear briefly.
Interesting.
So,
And then if you go to southern Maryland, I mean, one of our biggest energy producers in Calvert County is the nuclear power plant. I mean, that's why we have the amount of energy that's generated here in the state, because other types of energy has been taken off the grid. So, and they've had obviously no issues down there. And I know a lot of people that work in that area. So I just think I think it's a conversation for the future. And I think those conversations are happening. But none of it can happen, right, without really cool, innovative people finding opportunities to take advantage of the technology that exists right now from all different sectors, and kind of throwing that into a bag and saying, okay, so what can we do with this in the future? Like, people are so smart when they come up with different ways to utilize innovative tech. And I think when I think about being at the Maryland Tech Council, that is one of the most exciting things about my job, is being able to hear about all of these things that, in my mind, contribute to the mission of creating a state, a country, a global network of ideas and ways in which to make all of us better as humans. And we're always going to have barriers and hurdles to overcome, and conversations and disagreements, but the way out of it is always innovative thought. That's how I think about it.
I think you just answered one of
Absolutely.
Desmond's questions.
All of mine. All of mine have been answered. So we have had very good, serious conversation. I want to lighten it up a little bit. We usually we have, I don't know if we've done it the past 2 times, but kind of like a fire round, quick fire, quick fun, lighthearted answers.
I was expecting
have
you
to
to
be
be
quick fire.
here
Well-
last week and actually be like, quick fire, you know. You didn't do it.
Chris was knocking it out of the park anyways. He was doing it. Kelly is too, so I don't even know if I need this or not, but I'm going to make it light. We're talking about like important things here. So we're just going to do it. So a long time ago, in a past life, I was doing an interview for a newspaper when I was playing baseball in Virginia. And
back to baseball.
They asked me, I haven't brought it up yet. And they asked me if I could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be and why? So I'm going to ask you that question. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, right now, who would they be?
Margaret Thatcher. I think she would be an amazing dinner partner. And let's see. I've always wanted to meet her. Okay, so I'm going to make it kind of interesting. So Margaret Thatcher, Nikki Haley, not to get too political, but I think that they are great political minds. And then I would say, this might come as a shock, Hillary Clinton.
Really?
So I know it says quick round.
It's quicker.
It is. That's
right?
Go into tangents. It's cool.
But I think that their perspectives coming from different backgrounds, different generations, and both women, all 3 women who have kind of been trailblazers either in their own party or their own communities and have seen lots of different things. I would love to just sit and compare notes and see what they have to say to each other. I think it would be fun.
Kind of like a round table.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. I actually had the chance to meet Hillary Clinton when I was like 8 or something like that. And she like signed my arm. It was weird, but I was like a kid. I was in Shepherdstown. She made,
Did
like,
you not wash your arm for like a year? Did you save it?
No, I washed my. I'm not gonna dive into it.
Oh my God! There's something I could say, but I'm not going there.
Keep it to yourself.
I'm going to.
All right. Next thing's next. What's just a fun fact about you that not a lot of people know?
A fun fact. I'm sure that a lot of people know this because I talk about it endlessly, but I am the grandmother, the yaya of 2 of the best grandbabies in the whole world. And if I could do anything in my life, I would drop everything and just spend time with those littles. I have a little 3-year-old grandson and a year and a half-year-old granddaughter, and just cherish every single minute with them.
That's awesome. The yaya. Where does that, is that just like what they call you?
Well, yaya is Greek for grandmother.
Oh, okay.
And I have no Greek in my background.
Okay.
But my ex-husband,
I didn't know you were Greek.
I'm not.
Okay.
My ex-husband, he comes, his mother's side of the family is Greek. And so my children always grew up with a yaya and a papu. And their dad, my ex-husband, he's an only child. And so the only way that the yaya tradition moves forward is if I become yaya. So I had to go and ask my Greek former mother-in-law if it was okay for me to use the name yaya. And of course, everybody's so happy with it. We all get along really great. But for my boys' benefit, for the tradition, I am a Greek yaya.
A Greek yaya. That's cool. That's awesome. That's a cool story. I like that. Last one, and then we can move on. If you weren't in your current role, if you weren't killing it as the CEO of Maryland Tech Council, what would you be doing?
That's a great question.
Okay.
I don't know if I have an answer to that. If I weren't doing this, what would I be doing? Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, my goal was to be governor of the state of Maryland, and that didn't work out so well.
I knew I missed that in the intro.
So I came.
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, that's something that I didn't do. I mean, I attempted to do that. I would say I don't have a specific spot where I would be if I were not at the Tech Council, but I know that during the time when I was trying to think of what I was going to do when I grew up, I knew that it was always going to have to be something connected to a mission-driven effort, right? Which is why through, lots of conversations with lots of people after that, election and all of that, I had to find something, and I realized that I still had to be connected to Maryland, to the community, and it had to be a mission-driven job, which I try not to think about as a job, right? So it would still be something in a similar
Fair.
type of role.
It's a passion, not a job. It's my passion.
Exactly.
She's like,
exactly.
well, I don't know.
Public service is an interesting place to be, right? I mean, so, I was in an elected office, I was in an appointed office, I did all of that. And now I'm with a nonprofit that really does share in the mission of everything that I had done in my previous public service jobs. And I think, I don't think I'll ever move away from that.
I respect it. Well, that's awesome. As far as other questions, I really don't have many more. I don't know if Alec has more. He may.
I do, but I mean, I don't want to.
Ask away, brother.
I mean, obviously, because we've talked about, this is me being personal, like what I like with the ag stuff and all, just because.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
So, one of the biggest things, I'm kind of tying back in to kind of what I said earlier about like the membership of the Maryland Tech Council. Mm-hmm. So with all of like, obviously, if you look from the ag side, Maryland's number one industry is agriculture.
Correct.
But technology has become a huge portion of that. Mm-hmm. How do we, I guess, make more awareness about that? Because it's not just somebody out there in a field and a plow anymore. Or, and like Desmond and I have talked about multiple times with the food industry, it's the same regulations and everything that we're working with in the biotech industry and all of that. I don't think people often draw those two similarities, and they're just like, oh, it's farming or this, but it's all for human consumption in some capacity. So how do we kind of increase that awareness, or maybe get some more involvement from people into the Maryland Tech Council from that kind of industry?
I think platforms like this really help, and that's not just blowing smoke to you guys, but I mean, really, we have to continue to talk about that. Most people don't know that, Bio International, which is our overarching, international advocacy and networking organization, they have a complete programming department on bioag. Right? We have experts that are coming to Maryland from there to talk about this at one of our upcoming summits this January. So make sure that you attend that. And it's incorporating the conversations that go outside of what a typical technology conversation looks like, and incorporating it everywhere that you can in order to be able to get more people involved. I'm speaking at the Farm Bureau's conference coming up in December. I'm excited about that, and to sit and talk about what technology and innovation, especially with bio and how it interacts with agriculture. But then there's other technology that has to be incorporated as well and understood, which is the whole conversation about food security. And so how do you incorporate cyber awareness into the agricultural community, and how do you get people to really pay attention to those different types of technologies that have to be utilized in that industry now more than ever, right? You have a decreasing amount of land, but you have an increasing amount of need for food sustainability. That's a big deal, right? So how do you take advantage of that in really smart ways? Cecil County just announced that they're going to be the home of the East Coast's first big salmon farm onshore. That's a really big deal when we talk about food security and the amount of salmon that we import every year as a country and what we can now start producing for ourselves. All of those things have to be thought about in a broader general way, as opposed to thinking about, the farmer up the road that sits on a John Deere combine and harvests his food, right? It's different and it's advancing, and we can't ignore that for many, many reasons.
Yeah, I think there's still the whole old school mindset where, I don't know if this is a good term or not, but people say farming just plows and sows. And, it's...
Listen, I went to a farm in Washington County, over north of Hagerstown, and I was able to see the farmers there who got a pilot's license in order to fly the drone over their fields to cross-pollinate and cross-seed in between seasons an entire field with this drone in like 3 hours.
You cannot do that. You could not do that years ago.
But with no carbon footprint really there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you don't have the farmer sitting on the tractor utilizing diesel fuel, going up and down. You couldn't even cross seed because you'd have to be driving over the fields, right? And that is amazing technology, and understanding that farmers have a desire to do that, and if they don't, they need to. But also, you go into a dairy farm. Have you been into a dairy farm? And has anybody here milked cows?
I mean, I have. Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
The old in like the where they yes.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's like a whole system, right? I
Yeah,
mean, and there is so much technology that's involved with that. And, some of my greatest supporters in Frederick County has been known for dairy farming for forever, right? And you're decreasing the number of farms and they're just growing larger. But you walk into those operations and that is technology. And being able to advance the amount of production that you get, considering that there's less and less amount of people that want to go into the agricultural industry, you have to look at ways to make it bigger, faster, better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Alec, I'm happy you brought this up because.
Does that like pull on your rural West Virginia, even though you try and claim to be DC Metro?
Grew up. I grew up on a farm. It near and dear to my heart. Grew up on a dairy farm, actually. So, there was an idea that I heard, and I had a friend who's from Austria, and when I was in college, and I don't know if Maryland can do this, but we're talking about innovations in the ag tech realm, and we're talking about like the footprint is getting smaller, or the ability to be able to produce food. There's not much space. And one of the ideas was vertical farming. And I think it's a great idea. And he was talking about it to me, and he was like, yeah, in Germany, we grow like whole, what would be 50 acres up in the sky in a skyscraper that was abandoned a couple years ago, or they didn't finish building. And there's so much innovation involved in it. And you're talking about drones and how they're cross-pollinating and planting fields and things like that. And I think agriculture, and as Alec is kind of alluding to, has moved away from just being the farmer that gets up at 4 a.m. They probably still do, but gets up at 4 a.m. and then goes out and works his ass off in a field and then comes back and does that every day. And now it's turned into guys like Alec, who's a nerd.
I'm not a nerd.
He's a fun nerd, though.
Relax. He is. He's an IT guy, and now it's transitioned from it's in the process of transitioning from someone grinding every day in a field, hard work, killing themselves every day, to someone who's doing things efficiently, intelligently, using technology as much as they can. And I think it's a beautiful cross section where people or intersection where people are just coming together, and it's not like this weird I don't want to be in IT, or I just want to work blue collar, whatever. And now they're coming together, and I think ag tech is the perfect place for that. And anyways, I can go on and ramble and all of the other things, and there's not a question behind this, but this is just me to the conversation. I think it's so awesome, and I think that if Maryland Tech Council and everyone in the state of Maryland starts buying into the fact that there's not this separation, that there is this coming together of technology and blue collar work, the world, not just Maryland, but the world will be in a much, much better place rather than divided on these sorts of issues and topics.
I agree. Well said, Desmond. Well said.
Thank you. I should be apologizing. No, I'm kidding. I'm not doing that.
Hey, there's still time. There's still time, Desmond. I'll be your mentor. How's
that? Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, you got plenty of time. You're, 27, 26?
27. Not smart enough for it. Just not smart enough for it.
Oh,
people in politics have big brains.
Not as many as you think.
Some.
But I'll just stop with that. Not as many of them as you would think.
I don't know. I don't know personally, but I feel like the landscape down there is probably a little different than here. So,
hey man, Winston-Salem's had the same mayor for the past 35 years. So
wow.
Maybe it's my time to jump on.
Time for change.
I'm good. I haven't been here long enough. I'll come back to Maryland. Anyways.
But yeah, so
good.
Yeah, I just one last thing on that. You talk about all that technology and changing from the old ways, and to tie into what you said about the dairy industry.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is set up now to the point where you don't need to wake up at 4 a.m. anymore. The cows go in and get milked when they feel like it.
That's right.
And just all the change with that. So
there is change, right? And so years ago, this is a fun little tidbit that I'll leave you with. So I was in my first year of being a member of the House of Delegates, right, representing Frederick County. And I had the Farm Bureau and some farmers come to me and say, Kelly, we really want to do something. It's not cost effective sometimes in order to be able to be a farmer, right? You're not producing enough money and prices and all of that. So you want to be able to put some money back into your farm to keep the farmland there, to not incentivize the farmers selling to a housing development or whatever it is that they want. So we want to create an opportunity for a farm brewery to be an agricultural product in the state of Maryland. And I said, okay, because there was no farm breweries back in the day in 2011, 2012. And so we crafted a bill, all of us together, and we passed that bill. And that created an opportunity for farmers to use their agricultural products that they grow on their farm to be able to sell an agricultural product on their farm and utilize those funds to go back into the maintenance of their farm and the land and whatever, whether they had animals or upkeep that had to be taken care of. And that grew into one of the largest ag tourism industries in the country. I mean, we were one of the first in Maryland to have that. That policy is so important to think because they say, well, my kids might want to stay involved with the farm if it's something cool and fun, if it's not just waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do the first milking of the cows, right? I mean, they want to have something fun with it. And so this was kind of a way to get the younger generation more excited about farming and agriculture in general. And now you have every county across the state has a great population of ag tourism, and there's the University of Maryland has done studies on hops that are growing on the farms, and there's a science behind it and how they're able to produce a very specific Maryland type of hops for these craft beers. And it's fun to think about how innovation in that way intersected with policy and agriculture and created an entire new industry in the state. That's fun.
Yeah.
So are you the reason there's Attaboy in Frederick or Steinhardt or Idiom or name drop?
Indirectly, yes. And the very first, because that was the bill that I sponsored in 2012. So the very first farm brewery in the state of Maryland is Milk House Brewery at Still Point Farms. And if you haven't been, I would say the father of farm breweries runs that, and he's just an amazing guy. And it's a beautiful farm, and it's kind of right on the line between Frederick and Carroll County, and it's up in the valley, in the hills. And try it out next time you come, and make sure that everybody knows that without that innovation, we wouldn't have the advancement in agriculture. There you go. Mic drop.
Love it. Wait, I've seen this place. I'm sorry, I looked it up. Sorry,
You're
I had to
giggling.
know. Yeah, listen, we can include this or not, but I do like brewery tours whenever I come to Frederick. And I probably shouldn't all the time, but it's easy to go onto the creek in Frederick and go to, like I said, Steinhardt, Idiom, Attaboy, Smokehouse, I think is another one.
Yeah, and what I would recommend, Desmond, is to expand your horizons and go to a farm brewery as opposed.
I thought those were.
Those are
They're
craft.
not.
There's craft
They're just
breweries.
Craft and farm. Okay.
So if you go to a farm, and there's several of them around Frederick, I would say just explore it. You might find something really, really cool out in the country, back to where you grew up.
Back to where I belong.
Back where he's from, the brewing they
That's
do is in a
different,
still.
But we have that too. It's now advanced to distilled products as well. But
They do. Maryland's on the cutting edge of everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff with all that.
It is. Frederick County in particular. I love Frederick. Anyways, I think this was a great conversation. Kelly, thank you so much for hopping on and talking to us and listening specifically me, listening to me ramble on about whatever I'm talking about. So I appreciate you joining us, and the door's always open. You feel like coming back and talking to us, come on back. If you don't and we suck, fine by me. That's fine. But I appreciate you coming on.
We gave it a good college try at least.
I love it. This has been so much fun. You guys are amazing. Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun just to chit chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. We actually it was a week ago when we were talking to Chris, we were doing our outro and we were kind of like, I don't know. We were bringing up the fact that you were joining us, and we were like, wow, about to have a conversation with Kelly.
Yeah.
And then we were like, wait.
Conversations with Kelly.
Is that trademarked?
You know what? Interestingly enough, we did that. We actually have one here at Info Pathways.
I know.
Last year. And we got an email from somebody like in Ohio, because I think it was Coffee and Conversations with Kelly or something that we had called it. Mm-hmm. And she said, I have that as a registered trademark. You're not allowed to use that. And I'm like, what? And so we had to kind of like rethink it. But yeah, Kelly in Ohio has a registered trademark of Coffee with Kelly or Conversations with Kelly.
I miss that though.
I know. And things got so busy and, kind of, different directions. But, you never know when they're going to pop up once in a while, Alec. Because you were one of our frequent flyers.
Yeah, I know. It was a nice thing to do in the morning and meet people. And,
yeah.
So.
It became very congested in the calendar, but we're looking at doing something similar in the near future. Yeah.
Is there anything coming up real quick?
There are. We have in Baltimore, with our Baltimore chapter, we have a pitch and pour, which is fun with ventures and investors out there. In January, really kind of starts our next full year of advocacy and different types of conferences. So that's our big advocacy summit in January in Annapolis. In February is our bigger, better than ever Technology Transformation Summit, which will be held at the Live Casino. So that's always going to be a lot of fun. And then, just roll into some good things. In Frederick, actually, we have a happy hour at Brewer's Alley on the rooftop.
Oh.
Coming up.
Desmond, you might have to come back for that.
Desmond.
Hold on.
Yeah.
He loves Brewer's Alley.
Yeah.
As a Hood College kid, that was the place to go.
Yeah. So their new rooftop, we're having a little networking happy hour up there. In November.
You got time to come back for that?
www.mdtechcouncil.com.
There we go.
I'm going to look it up.
And it has all of our events on there, but there's some really good stuff.
One could say I might be there. But yeah, that's awesome. We will definitely, I might not be, but I might come to Tech Transfer because I have other work in Maryland. So you might come to the Tech Transformation or whatever it's called. I'll come to that one.
If you come, Desmond, you get coined with a weird nickname. That's how I'm the fancy cowboy now.
That's right. Yeah, Alec shows up in costume
at every event. That's not costume.
Kind of.
Drag him to Nashville. So.
He looks different every time he shows up somewhere because he's got like his own, je ne sais quoi. His own way of being.
I'm going to... The event that we're going to in Nashville, I'm going to be in my element. So
you are? What kind of event is this?
Biomedical research.
Yeah, biomedical research.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be in Nashville in December for a conference. Well, you guys are going to behave yourselves.
I'm married. I have no choice but to behave myself.
We'll see.
Hey, that's a great attitude to have.
When the conference ends for the day, it's Nashville. It's my first time.
It's my first time.
As a musician and all.
Yeah.
Like, it is,
How many cowboy hats do you own?
Just two.
Just two. So will you bring both of them? I mean, is that like hat protocol?
I'm probably going to buy a new one down there because, like, my main one is very expensive. So
you don't want to get it ruined.
Yeah, flying and
stuff.
stuff.
Do you have a case for it?
No, I never bought a case. So I just have a hat rack for hats at home for them.
No. Now it's just collecting dust.
No, it's not collecting dust. I wear it out different events and all.
I'm kidding.
He wears it. Trust me, we have pictures.
He does.
But we're coming into felt season. Everybody's been asking me, like, at the different events, why aren't you wearing your hat? And I was like, it's a felt hat. There's rules.
There's rules?
There's rules with cowboy hats. And
what do you mean?
You only wear a certain hat for certain times of the year, material, and so.
Shows how much I know. I don't even own a pair of boots. I'm being forced to wear like cowboy boots when I get down there. I gotta buy some.
I've got a lot of boots.
Just buy ones that are comfortable.
Yep.
That's what I'm after. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to buy anything crazy. I just can't.
You buy a pair of Marriott's, they'll be your first boot and your only boot, and you'll love them, and they'll be like $200.
Thank you, fancy cowboy.
But they're not made in the USA. They are, unfortunately. If you want to buy local, you can get some double H's. They're manufactured in Pennsylvania. But
not local enough. They're not made in West Virginia, Maryland, or North Carolina. I don't want them.
Pennsylvania's pretty close. It's about 10 minutes from where we're sitting right now.
Yeah. It's my home. So.
Not good enough for me.
All right.
10 minutes away, still 10 minutes away. Anyways, cool. Well, I think we're good.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.